Take a second to be cognizant of the moment because this is where your life changes. That's because it's really easy to get lost in the world of plugins because there's millions of them. They all do different things, and they're all freaking awesome. Some plugins add effects to already existing sounds, like adding distortion to a guitar track, softening the high-end frequencies to your vocals, adding room space like a reverb effect to your bass, and a lot more. Some plugins, like the ones just mentioned, are also known as effects, but other plugins are meant to be used in conjunction with a MIDI track or virtual instrument track. If you've watched our video, How to Create a MIDI Track, then you're familiar that a MIDI file doesn't contain any actual sound because it's just a pattern. It isn't until you add a MIDI plugin that sound gets played back as the pattern you're using. MIDI plugins can be anything from synthesizers, acoustic guitar, bass, drums. There's really too many to list. We're going to show you some common FX plugins that you can use in Mixcraft and some MIDI plugins that you can use to bring life to your virtual instruments. Let's get into it. We've already started a project for you. Let's find it by going into the pop-up folder on the desktop. Double-click on the Challenges folder. Open Play with Plugins. Then open the folder called Open Me to Play with Plugins. Double-click on the project file with the same name. And wait for Mixcraft to open up. Once the project is open, go to File, Save As. Navigate to an area that we can save this to, like the Mixcraft project folder, which is on the desktop, or you can go to the user folders area, which is also on the desktop, and create your own folder. We're going to save this as a new project. This way the project we created for this challenge remains intact. It will allow you to pick up where you left off, while allowing the next person to start from the beginning. So we've given you a jumping off point. Track 1, which is our virtual instrument track, already has a completed MIDI pattern on it. Track 2, our audio track, has a recorded guitar part. Press the spacebar to hear how they sound together. We'll play around with the regular audio track first, so I'm going to click Solo so that we can isolate the guitar track. To add a plugin, we'll click FX on the track we want to add an effect to, which is going to be track 2. Here we can search for any plugin we want. We can also scroll down the list. If you're not sure what any of these do, that's okay. We created a PDF called Plugin List-Available Plugins, which details what every single one of these plugins in Mixcraft do. There's also a PDF called Plugin List-Common Types of Effect Plugins, which will explain common plugin categories. To find these, open the pop-up folder on the desktop and double-click on the Helpful Documents folder. Alright, back to our plugins. Let's open the one called EU Pro Mix EQ. You can either type in the letters EU or scroll down and go to the E section. The EU Pro Mix EQ, this is a free equalizer plugin available for anyone to download. We can use the drop-down in the plugin window to select from different presets. To hear the original audio without the plugin effect, you can toggle this plugin power button at the top left on and off. Play around with the plugin to see what it does. Once you're done, you can click the X at the top right of the plugin to close out of it. We can add more than one plugin to any audio or virtual instrument track, but for this video, we're going to be doing one at a time. To remove the EU Pro Mix plugin, click this red X. Now let's try the Ozone 10 Elements plugin. Ozone 10 Elements is a paid plugin donated to us by iZotope. It uses artificial intelligence to come up with a suggested effect starting point. Once it's opened, to use it, hit the spacebar on your keyboard to begin playing our guitar audio. Once it's playing, click Start Listening. During this process, if things freeze up a little bit, that's normal. Just wait for it to finish. Once it's done processing, the left-hand side of Ozone is going to show us how our sound matches up to common music genres. You can use the EQ at the top to try to fit it closer to the genre we have selected. The imager at the bottom left changes the stereo level, otherwise known as widening or narrowing. Moving this up will increase the stereo effect, making it wider. Lowering it will decrease it, making it more narrow. When you're done exploring this plugin, you can close out by clicking the X in the upper corner. Then to close out of the plugin completely, click the red X. Other plugins that use AI that are available on a Sobriety Sounds computer inside of Mixcraft are Neutron, which adds effects to instruments, and Nectar, which is primarily for vocals. Now let's open the plugin called Shred Amp Simulator. This is another free plugin that adds different levels of distortion to the audio. The drop-down at the top gives us a whole bunch of different presets that we can then manipulate using various knobs. Go ahead and play around with this for a while. There's plenty of presets and variations to choose from. When you're done, you can close the plugin out by clicking the X in the right corner. To remove the plugin entirely from this track, click that red X. Let's do one more effects plugin. Let's choose the one called Classic Flanger. This is another one that comes with presets that we can then customize. Don't forget, you can use the plugin's power button to bypass it to hear the original audio compared to the plugin's effect. When you're done, close out of it by clicking the X in the right corner. To remove the plugin entirely from this track, click the red X. With plugins, you can get real crazy, and of course you can add more than one plugin to a single track. Explore what's available and feel free to use the PDF in the pop-up Helpful Documents folder for more information. Now let's see what kind of sounds we can apply to our MIDI pattern. If you soloed the guitar track from earlier, make sure to unselect solo now. Now I'm going to click solo on our virtual instrument track so I can isolate it for the time being. I want to point out that the FX button adds effects to already existing sounds. Since a MIDI pattern contains no sound in and of itself, we need to choose what sound to assign it. Later on, we can use the FX button on the virtual instrument track if we want, but for now, let's add a sound to this MIDI pattern. To begin, click the keyboard icon on our MIDI track. Doing this will bring up our MIDI plugins. Here's a list of all the available sounds we can assign to our MIDI pattern. Let's click on the bass category and choose Distorted Bass. Then we'll click the spacebar to hear how it sounds. This is one of the MIDI plugins that come already inside of Mixcraft and doesn't have its own graphic window to adjust parameters. That sounds cool, but let's change it to something else. Click on the brass category on the left. I'm going to choose Trumpet and press the spacebar to play it back. This is another one that comes with Mixcraft already and doesn't have an extra graphic interface where we can adjust parameters. It just simply adds the sound to the pattern. Now let's kick things up. We're going to look at one of our paid plugins. Click on the All category in the left side. It's towards the top. Now use the search bar to search for Studio Strings. This plugin is made and donated by Air Music Technology. Click on either the VST3 version or 64-bit version, it doesn't matter which one. This plugin has its own graphic interface. We can use this drop-down at the top to select from a variety of presets. You can up the volume with this level knob at the top right. You can change which type of string instrument should play at the top left. Then at the bottom we have more tabs. The Sound tab lets us adjust the pitch bend and volume characteristics. There's a Legato tab. Legato is a term that means tied together and impacts the playing technique. To use legato, turn this toggle switch on. Then finally you have an effects tab where you can change the amp type and add different sound effects like depth and flutter. Go ahead and play around with this. When you're finished, you can close out of the plugin by clicking the X in the right corner. Then to remove the sound entirely, click the red X. There's a lot more really cool plugins that were donated by Air Music Technology that you should definitely check out. I'll flash a list on the screen briefly, but you can see the full list by going into the pop-up folder on the desktop and then going into the Helpful Documents folder to see the full list of Air Music Technology plugins that you have access to. So at most of the Sobriety Sounds stations, there's going to be a MIDI controller. A lot of them are made by Arturia. We have a bunch of the Minilab MK2s. When you buy this piece of hardware, it comes with some software. One of the software that comes with it is called Analog 4. Analog 4 is a MIDI plugin hub. What that means is it's a plugin that's a repository of a bunch of other plugins. Let's open it and take a look at it. To get back to where we were, we're going to click that keyboard icon on our virtual instrument track, and we're going to search for Analog 4. Just type in the word analog though. Once you see it, click on it once. It's going to take a while to open. Be patient while it loads. Once Analog 4 is fully open, you're going to click Start. Now we can filter by category. So you can choose from synths, pianos, organs. I'm going to choose synths. Once I click synths, I can see all the different synth plugins that I can choose from right in the center. If I wanted to get more specific, I can go back to the left and filter by bass or brass or keys. I'm going to just leave it on synths for now. Go ahead and click on Acid Binge to hear how it sounds. Once you have that selected, you can either press the keys on the MIDI controller that's at your station, or you can click on any of these keys in this piano roll. That sounds real funky. So the benefit of using the MIDI controller that's at your station is you can use the knobs to change a lot of the effects. So the knobs that you see in this plugin correlate to the physical knobs on the Minilab that's at your station. Let's choose a different sound. I'm going to choose Junctions. Junctions is pretty cool. Feel free to use the filter categories on the left-hand side. A lot of the bass sounds within this plugin are a lot cooler than the ones that come stock in Mixcraft. So not only can you turn the physical knobs on the MIDI controller at your station, but you can add more effects at the top. Alright, keep in mind that for this video, we were only using one effect at a time. So if you find an effect that you like and you want to add another one, you can do that. Once you add the effects that you want, you can close out of the effects window. Just don't click the red X's or it's going to remove the effect entirely from the track. Also keep in mind that you can sometimes have more than one MIDI plugin associated to your virtual instrument track. I wouldn't get too crazy going down that route. If you want to manipulate the sound that's coming from the MIDI plugin that you're using, then your best option is to go and add some effects in the FX area. You can add as many effects as you want and make it sound as weird as you want. Alright, cool, so I'm going to leave you to it. You should now know how to add effects to an audio track. You should also know how to add a MIDI plugin to your MIDI pattern. Don't forget, you can add drum loops to these as well. If you're not sure how to do that, check out some of the other videos that are available inside the pop-up folder. Alright everyone, have fun.